Da, stvarno će ti sledeći put će biti, ali dobro. Ja bih te snimke da stavim ovog glasa. Ali ovo predavanje će biti na tekstu. Ja deo ovo predavanje će da stavi. Ja recimo se trudim da se i snimci stavi. Znači, to su i ne. Nije ono vreme COVID-a. Ima to. Da, ti si prisustvovao iz Berlina. Nije ovo sad na ovdje da vidimo. Alex. Dobro. Alexander, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Profesor, dobro večer.
Dobro večer, Saiful.
Dobro večer.
Dobro večer. We will see. We will start soon. I will not wait for long. How long will Dushanka? She does not know.
She didn't have any exact time, but she probably decided that she would do it. I think that she's also going to work soon.
So 5 o'clock is not the best term. Maybe we can move that. I will ask the head, Professor Ivan Karasic, that we move for 6 o'clock.
Right now, for me, the problem because I'm still working at my previous job, which was here in the street, but only in Belgrade.
It's far. It's far. It's impossible.
Impossible. I will be coming here at 6. It's an hour, 45 minutes. No,
okay, just to remind you before we start that tomorrow, Professor Miodrag, it should have been, how to say, his lecture should have been given together with those technical methodological lectures from the beginning of methodology and practical skills course, but he had some other obligations. That is why tomorrow, but his lecture on different research methods is a very interesting one. And so tomorrow again, you will have methodology at 6 o'clock. And if you come offline in person, it will be in the room 236. That's an exception. I apologize, but for you who are on, but also Alexander, try to come in person if you can. And so, okay, so tomorrow at 6, methodology in the room 236. That's called the legal clinic from the main hall to the left, immediately there. So that is one information. Another one is, as I said, this will be the second part of my first lecture started being held at the Feminist Political and Legal Theories due to the fact that that is a very complex lecture and that belongs somehow to a certain extent also to the field of methodology, theoretical methodological premises, but enters the substance of the feminist theory, and Professor Miller will not do that. He will give a general, how to say, overview of different research methods. And as I said, try to come to his lecture because he is a very good lecturer and it will be relevant. And the second information implied with this one is, as I said a few times, tomorrow we will not have classes of feminist political and legal theories. Because of this, because Professor Miodrag took over that term of the larger master's program. On Friday, at Feminist Political and Legal Theories, you will have the lecture of Professor Bajc, and et cetera. Readers, hard copy readers, I have a few here, so Alexander, come and take it. Saiful, I don't know, maybe somebody told me that you're in Kragujevac. Maybe I can send it by postage to you if you want. You can send on my email your street address. Are you in Kragujevac?
Yes, madam.
Okay, so you can send me. It's not for me. I want to do things for students. So if you send me your address, I can send it to you. So that's it.
Okay.
So now we will start. Dushanka, you will come to help me to diminish this in order to. But just a second. First, shall I start first recording?
This meeting is being transcribed and summarized.
Okay, you can remember that at within the first part of this lecture, we spoke about patriarchy, the dialectic of patriarchy and emancipation, about the old and new patriarchy, about patriarchy as the core source and cause of gender-based violence. We also spoke about neoliberal globalization and its impacts on worsening the position of many women in context of understanding that there have been the winners of globalization among women, but a small proportion of women, and for most others, the losers of globalization. Neoliberal globalization brought the worsening. That's the reason that the recommended author Beatrix Campbell speaks about the end of equality. That's the title of her. Of course, we cannot speak literally about the end of equality, but metaphorically speaking, she wanted to say that life conditions of most women have been worsened. And I also spoke about patriarchy as the main, the first initial main, in that sense, main cause of gender-based violence. Then I explained how the civilizational struggle between controversial, mutually matching and mutual crossing of civilizations of reproducing and keeping on patriarchy and emancipatory trends in everyday life, in education, in international, European law, national laws, etc., that this clash of civilizations within individual, group, context, private, public context, institutional context, so that has also been the cause of gender-based violence. One of the examples for it can be the honor crimes. So the honor crimes are initiated by how to say, unworthiness of the family's partners, male persons from the culturally from ethnocultural collectivists context to accept changes in the behavior, for example, of sisters, daughters, etc. And I also mentioned then, and within this second part of the lecture, I will again speak about intersectionality, intersectional or multiple gender based discrimination as the most complex cause of gender-based violence. So that's the context in which patriarchy has been combined with other sources of discrimination in different concrete historical situations, and then we really get the hell of gender-based violence, which is not only based on gender, but is intersectionally caused and formed and expressed, manifested. So this all was, how to say, a kind of an introduction into the main part of the talk about feminist intersectionality approach as the paradigmatic feminist approach nowadays. And this intersectionality approach becomes the paradigmatic feminist analytical tool since 1990s, within the third wave of feminist stream of thought and practice. So within postmodern feminisms since 1990s and feminist movements since that times. And I will explain that a bit more. So just to say that these postmodern feminisms were inspired by the postmodern political theories of that times, which started putting into question the universal categories of the whole history of political philosophy and political theories. I spoke about that in my second lecture within feminist political and legal theories course. So the same, it was the inspiration for feminist thinkers and members, representatives of feminist movements, also to start putting into question the general notions, categories within feminist thought, like, for example, the woman, and to realize, to deconstruct, to dismantle this kind of universal categories in a sense that there is no universal category of woman. There is no the woman. There are women across the world within different social groups, within different concrete historical contexts of their life conditions, all of them being exposed to the patriarchy or the dialectic of patriarchy and emancipation in different manners, in different concrete historical contexts, but none of them are they cannot be put together into the package of the woman, but the women of different groups, different heredity, different life conditions, etc. So that this understanding, some kind of an analogy between how feminist theory started criticizing the history, the mainstream political theories for their presenting categories of thought as universally valid, and then feminists started dismantling and pointing to the fact that, as a matter of fact, these universal categories, like as also the human rights, or the man, human species, human being, rights of man, of the citizen, etc., that they hide, or that they, in them, have the main focus on male persons, and that they have been hiding all the time and make invisible women and their subordinated position. So analogically, it has been happening within feminist movements. So from 1990s, also the feminist movements, I did not mention that in the PowerPoint presentation. I don't know why I omitted that, but linked closely to this, what I'm talking about. So there have been feminist movements also during the end of the 19th century, 21st century, across the globe. However, the first and second feminist waves from the Western part of the world were dominant and have been, how to say, established as the mainstream within feminist legacy. So again, we have hiding within this universalization of the experiences of the Western women, hiding even much worse position of the women from the third world, from poor countries, from other countries out of Western focus. So also these feminist movements and feminist legacy in the theory has been, how to say, put into the question in a sense that not that it is not legitimate, but that it is not legitimate as an universal knowledge, because that's a West-centric knowledge. Like as mainstream political theories, which have been mainstream and West-centric, so these feminist theories and movements, which have been considered as the mainstream, they are West-centric and they are built by middle-class, well-educated, white Western feminists. So,
White feminism, actually.
that is not similar. That is what I'm talking about. So when we how to say, consider feminism as equal or mostly equal to the feminism of the first and second wave of the Western world, then that's feminism of the white, middle class, well-educated feminists from the West. And why is that important? Putting this universalizing attempts into question, first, the space starts being open for understanding that there are different contexts of feminisms across the world. And also, that is the situation, and opening the space for understanding that this centric understanding of the woman, the position of women, like as that it is the general knowledge, causes some kind of femo-nationalism, West-centric femo-nationalism. So you can understand what it means, hiding and making invisible multiple discrimination of the women, different women in different contexts out of the West world. And why is that also especially important? This femo-nationalism, which I mentioned, a critique of the white Western feminisms implies that the Western feminists do not take enough care or do not take into consideration the specific additional sources of multiple discrimination of the women out of the Western world, which are directly connected to the legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism. That also can be said, and there are also postmodern political theories put into question Western political theories from that point of view. So that's not the general knowledge about what's going on in the politics, etc., etc. But now, so this is for us very important, and for understanding how important are these different experiences for women across the globe, especially in the age of globalization. So that also is the trigger for this starting understanding that the knowledge production cannot be reduced to the norms and categories of the Western feminism. So that opens the space for even much bigger emergence of non-Western feminisms, anti-colonial feminism, Latin American feminism, feminisms of indigenous women, feminisms of colored women from Africa, but also from the USA. And what I mentioned earlier, now once again to mention that critical race feminism of the Black feminists, women from the USA, mostly contributed to this dismantling of the West-centric understanding of gender-based violence and to expanding these non-Western approaches and concrete knowledge productions within understanding of gender-based violence. And one more point, this trend of putting into question universal categories of women, feminist movements, patriarchal causes of discrimination also forward and triggered the tendencies of dismantling the universal category of gender, universalized of gender, like and universalized mostly as binary gender. So expanding and this as that's a good term, dismantling of binary understanding of gender leads towards including into the feminist theory or queer theory. Sometimes they are fused, sometimes they parallelly and cumulatively contribute to the enriching of knowledge. So we, at the end of the day, and as the result, get the situation that intersectionality approach also includes this non-binary approach, goes far beyond reducing the feminist understanding to the binary, but expanding the concept of gender, and we will have the lecture, one part of the lecture, I think the next week about that, how the concept of gender and sex have been changed and multiplied. So these are, how to say, first introductory ideas about intersectionality as a paradigmatic feminist approach, and now I will go more into details. So intersectionality approach presupposes all points mentioned for patriarchy as the main root of gender-based discrimination. That's very important not to forget. But underlines that the gender-based discrimination is always based also on other grounds of discrimination. Meaning, or differently said, I like also that play of the words, that gender-based discrimination has never been based only on gender, but also on other sources of discrimination, being race, class, age, education, and I will speak later about that. So, intersectionality approach insists on understanding gender-based inequality in a complex and situated manner. You understand it. We don't need to explain. But if you want, interrupt me, ask me, add something, disagree, put into question, do what. Now I'm very concentrated, so I do not have it. I do it wrongly that I do not ask you very often, but just feel free. Okay, so it insists on understanding gender-based inequality in a complex and situated manner with a much more inclusive approach regarding women of different races, classes, age, I don't want to say ages, age, ability or disability, and other sources of multiple discrimination, and also regarding non-binary queer persons again within different classes, races, ages, etc., etc. On the other, so vice versa. So we should never forget that gender-based discrimination has not been based only on gender, but we also should never forget that intersectionally understood gender-based discrimination should not ever forget the main root, the main cause, patriarchy, because it really happens. It happens. Too much focus on intersectionality, on multiplicity of discrimination, and at the end, this main root has been forgotten. So that's important to know.
Kliknite ovdje dole. Ne, nije puštena ova.
Šta nije puštena?
Prezentacija nije puštena.
Kako nije puštena? Au, da. Da. Sorry, I did forget to do something else technically. Okay. So the point is that women always have been the persons belonging to a particular patriarchal context, plus particular class, race, education, age, physical, mental status, sexual orientation, religious background, plus political, economic, cultural, educational background. So this just has to be kept in mind among judges, among policymakers, among those who deal here or there with gender-based discrimination. You have to have all these components in mind in order to understand and how the ways out could be articulated. So this complex, maybe I will mention it later, but now I have a need to say that. So intersectionality approach, why it becomes paradigmatic? Because it provides the most complex tools, analytical tools for a most complex catching the reality of life, the reality, the most complex reality of discrimination. That's why intersectionality approach is, how to say, so capacitated analytical tool. And when speaking about different bases of discrimination, fused or mutually crossed within concrete situations of multiple discrimination of concrete women from here or there, something extremely important to be understood. That we are speaking, I will mention that later again, but it doesn't matter. So what are we trying to understand? That different systems of power have been included into those concrete situations of multiple discrimination. When one person is especially discriminated on the basis of class exploitation, on the basis of age and ageism, on the basis of race, we are speaking about power systems of racism, classism, ageism. So we are speaking about power systems. So within one person or groups of discriminated women, we have mutual, how to say, crossing and affecting that person or those groups of women from different power relations. It's extremely important to be understood. Jelena?
I have a question. I'm trying to put all of this into a chronological, historical context. So this is the third wave of feminism, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody speaks also about the third and fourth, but it doesn't matter. That's from 1990s. Dismantling those universal categories, simplified understanding of gender discrimination, and putting all these relevant elements into the analytical framework.
Okay, so the third way is from the 1990s, and second, because I know, I think it's the 70s, when
Yes,
the Gloria Steinem and all of them. There was also
there were first
and
black
black feminists, and they were like
separated. So as I said at the beginning, so I did not go into these details because there will be the lecture on feminist movements, but now I will mention that. That's true. So the first to say, the first feminist wave or feminist movement is the so-called suffragette movement from the end of 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, initiated by the Universal Declaration. With the Declaration of Independence from USA from 1776 and French. During the French Revolution, French Declaration on Equality of the Man and the Citizen. Those were declarations and revolutionary results, declaratively, universally valid for all human beings, but the human being or the man was male primarily. But women understood, they recognized themselves and their position within the category of universal equality of the man and citizen, and they wanted to be recognized, but French revolutionaries did not want to recognize that. American revolutionaries also did not want. Women had to struggle. Some male, like John Stuart Mill and some other minority of male political theologians did help women. But women had to struggle, and the last time at the first lecture I mentioned, in the USA, women had to struggle until 1920, also in the Great Britain, and the World War I helped because their patriotism weakened or softened the public sympathies for, because they did not have. So they were how to say reacted from all sides, from the parliaments, from the revolutionaries, from men, etc., etc. So that was the first, and then after the Second World War, these suffragette movements were finished with formal legal equality of male and female, men like as men like as human beings. That is why UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights was called of human rights, not of rights of men, in order to escape this too easy slippery into identifying man and male. Very interesting. And so, universal equality, right to vote, political rights of women were won. And in the most countries after the Second World War, 1944, 1945, etc. Somebody mentioned Switzerland with 1971, but that was an exception. So former legal equality was established. However, the second wave of feminist movement from the Western world happened from 1968 with those new social movements, student movements, feminist peace movements, etc., etc. Among them, feminists, and feminists organized themselves into particular social movements. Also because of an experience, for example, within the student movements, that their colleagues, male students, protesters, they expected them, now I'm really simplifying, that they will cook them coffee or something like that. And then their awareness raising was expanding more and more, and together with the trigger which came from Simone de Beauvoir book, The Second Sex, they understood that formal legal equality is not sufficient, that legal reforms and cultural changes are necessary in order that formal legal equality transcends towards something what would mean more substantive equality. So that's, and within the second wave, there can be, that is all simplification, but that is used. There are three main streams: radical feminism, which was radical in a sense to how to say, to affirm ideas about that there is no help, there is no way to overcome these discrepancies between male and female, because biology and sexual differences cannot be overcome. So women should focus themselves on themselves. So they cannot expect from male persons to change themselves, and the better off is possible. So that is the radical feminism, which also was very important for clarifying importance of overcoming the dichotomy between the private and public sphere. Besides radical feminism, you know their slogan, private is political. So that's radical feminism. And that slogan and this importance of overcoming this dichotomy has been adopted by all other feminist streams later on, and also by the third wave of feminism. And the second is the liberal feminism, which insists on reforms, and femo-nationalism and West-centric universalization of feminist categories can be related mostly to that stream, and socialist stream of this second wave feminist movements, which speaks about an importance of economic independence of women and exploitation. So there are germs of intersectional approach connecting class and gender discrimination, and mentioning importance to overcome unpaid household work and care within the family, etc., and also surplus exploitation of women within the public space, factories, paid work, etc. So these are the streams, Western and West-centric, more or less streams. And yes, there were some Black feminists among radical feminists, liberal feminists, but there are also collisions and tensions and organizing on the feminists, Black feminists separately. Angela Davis, do you?
Yeah, there was also a Black woman who was a candidate for president. I don't know. No.
No, I don't remember that. But please make research, and then later, because we don't have a time now, I go too far from the points which I want to. But anyway, it was necessary what you asked me.
I was watching the TV show called Miss America, and it was about a woman. She was like right wing, it's all on the real actors. People, and she was actually against Gloria Steinem and all the movement. So the TV show is about her, and there are so
sometimes even within the second wave there were tensions and collisions, sometimes coalitions, but always this tension, and there are reasonable or justifiable roots of those tensions, because white feminists most often forget what I spoke about, colonial or slavery legacy in the USA, and the discrimination of Black. In 1920, equal right to vote was primarily won for white women, not before 1960s. And you know a lot about the Black people struggle for their political rights with Martin Luther King, and what kind of deep racism had been and has also still been present, existent. So all of these layers of the complexity of history and different legacies comes on the surface, and that's good. That makes things more difficult to understand. But what I wanted also to say, now you invited me to say that. So I mentioned femonationalism. You mentioned these collisions and tensions between different parts of the second wave feminisms in the USA, for example. Nowadays also, there are collisions and tensions between Black feminists and white feminists in the USA. Sometimes also Black feminists exaggerating, putting focus only on their experiences, metaphorically to say, with forgetting the common source in patriarchy. That is what I said previously. Common patriarchal heredity is the converging axis for all feminisms. But openness and resonating readiness to understand, to catch differences, to take into consideration how, for example, women from Africa or Asia have been and still have been deprivileged, far more deprivileged compared with Western white women. So Western white feminist movements have to have that in mind, and solidarity and mutual understanding of different experiences has to be on agenda. For example, also there are very controversial cases with gender racism. That is another, a few very interesting authors. Maybe I can upload to you these books, fantastic books about the gender racism. So where it happens that the right-wing political parties in the West misuse better position of LGBTQ plus persons in the West. Their human rights are better protected in spite of all problems which they have. To demonstrate how Western civilization is more advanced compared with other civilizations. So that's also feminists, and then some feminists within Western feminist movements also currently have adopted this position in a sense. Of course, gender, female mutilation or honor crimes are unacceptable, but maybe burqas are acceptable. So, and they put into the same box or package these cultural differences, which some of them really put into danger the lives of women, and some which are cultural differences which those women, some of them voluntarily with their will accept. So, but some do not. Sometimes, like in honor crimes, when the ethnocultural unity, collectivity, rigid habits, norms want to to discipline everybody, and they do that. Like as patriarchy. Patriarchy was, how to say, reproduced through thousands of years until nowadays through rearing, upbringing, education. So you reproduce systems of values. So that's some kind of disciplining, male and female, for molding them into particular social norms.
Yeah.
So that's also in this case. So feminist movement of the Western region have to be much more open and cautious to make these differences, not easily to slip into defending human rights against cultural rights of some non-Western women, immigrants, for example. I think that I rather well explained this.
Mm-hmm.
We also have.
But shall we stop now, because I will not say anything about.
It's interesting that
It is interesting.
Yeah.
It is really extremely. But say, Elena.
No, I just want to say it's also similar with the gender critical feminism, which it includes gender as the term.
So we will speak about that on one of the next lectures. There are, so with Judith Butler, binary group, yes.
Transgender people
Yes.
are discriminated by this way of family.
Yes, transgender by LGBT and binary gender also. So so each group with specific sources of additional discrimination should be open or cautious to understand, to situate knowledge, as I said previously, situated knowledge. Do not consider one type, one situation as the general or close to general or so. Very interesting. It really, everything is extremely interesting. And with multiplying the concept of gender, overcoming, so post-feminist and postmodern theories are put into question, Judith Butler first, the concept of gender, and all others who are close to her or think similarly or in some, they say that if, for example, I'm on the side to speak about multiple genders and keeping the concept of gender in order to be able to keep the capacity for putting into question patriarchy, binary, but then also non-binary. So that's my, and when I will present these issues, the next or on one of the forthcoming lectures, I use the book which I uploaded at Moodle of, what's her name? Who first presents, I will tell you later, she presents these steps forward and further on of dismantling the concept, universal concept of gender, which is binary by definition, to multiple genders, but then again comes back to the combination of keeping the concept of gender something similar to what I'm speaking about. And the others, critical feminist theories of gender, they say, no, that's not usable term anymore, because in this or that way, always again, it puts the whole story into the box of binary.
Yeah, they say that
hiddenly or openly.
The theory is more of it's a trans-radical feminism, actually.
Please prepare yourselves to talk about that on that lecture. The first part will be on sex and gender. Please be ready. Please be ready. Maybe you even know more than me, but prepare you. No, I'm joking. No, that was not. I wanted to invite you to prepare yourselves that we together consider the issue. So don't forget. But now, okay. So systems of power and domination, racism, classism, ageism, disablism intersect in different manners with patriarchy and sexism in each concrete case of multiple gender-based discrimination. And intersectionality approach has to comprehend how multiple power systems have been mutually crossed, intersected in the concrete cases of gender-based discrimination. And what is not unimportant to say, intersecting of patriarchy and sexism with other mentioned systems of power domination can be discovered everywhere, in institutions of politics, law, culture, economy, media, but also in social structures such as neighborhoods, schools, jobs, religious institutions, recreational facilities, physical and cyberspace, marketplaces. So it's everywhere, and we should have that in mind. All of this, what I'm talking about. And so I said this, that has never been based only on gender, but on other. And now on, I have to develop this. The point is also that intersectional understanding of gender-based discrimination should not put ever aside the basic root of patriarchy. I said that. But now, so always patriarchy in the interplay. And now what is critical to remember, that intersectionality should not be confined to a methodological demand that all relevant features of the concrete person's discrimination be taken together in consideration, like as some patchwork combination of different sources of discrimination, like it, because identity politics, identitarian streams in multiculturalism and in feminism in one period of time did reduce this multiple discrimination to the identity of some person. So for us, the point is that we understand you are poor, you are not educated, you are unemployed, you are discriminated as the disabled woman or girl, you are subject to sex trafficking, etc., because you are from the migrant woman. That's not enough. That's not the story. What is behind the mutual crossing of power systems, which have as the result these all different sources of discrimination? So how class exploitation, how racism, how ageism as the power systems play the roles through exploitation, through racism, through stereotypes, cultural prejudice, etc. So that why these power systems have to be kept in mind all the time, because that active playing role of all of them have to be understood in order that actively steps towards overcoming all those sources of discrimination of power systems be tackled. It does not mean that we can overcome global class differentiation, but we have to have it in mind in concrete cases in order to do what we can in policy making, etc. So reducing intersectionality to a patchwork-like identitarian project wrongly transforms intersectionality into structural container. Very good term. I took it from maybe Ekani, I forgot. When I don't put, I forget. So that's not, I also like this patchwork-like combination, or it is similar meaning to this structure, how I call that, structural container. Instead of using it as an analytical tool for catching ontological complexity of the real life multiple oppression and for striving towards its overcoming. So this activist dimension of feminisms and policies and legislation which have been gender sensitive and competent has been lost when we reduce the story and understanding to the container or identitarian policies. So, so our colleagues online, does anybody want to say something, to comment, to ask?
No, madam. Carry on.
Okay.
No comment.
Okay. So, so I like most among feminists critical race feminism, Patricia Hill Collins. And I will not mention this because we don't have a time. She speaks about intersectionality approach like as the metaphor, because we sometimes, when we hear that, we guess what it is, we can consider that as the metaphor, but also speaks about intersectionality as analytical tool. I'm speaking mostly about it as mechanisms for the knowledge production. And she also speaks about the paradigm shift in thinking about how mutually constructed power relations shape social phenomena. I like this. So paradigm shift. We are now speaking about the shift, the changed. We go beyond patriarchy, dialectical patriarchy. We go beyond and make the shift for the knowledge production with this much more complex approach. And I like this her. So she makes this scheme, but it's not so important for you. The most important concepts and premises which she uses are for us relevant. Core constructs, relationality, always social roles, always we speak about some relations of discrimination, subordination, struggle against, etc., etc. Then power, core concept power and power systems, social inequality. All the time we have been speaking about different bases of social context, situated knowledge, contextual, globally, individually, locally, regionally, etc. Complexity. This term, ontological complexity of our lives, in which all of these things are crossed mutually, and social justice, of course. We spoke about gender injustice, gender justice. I will mention it a little bit later. So, and guiding premises, which I like most, race, class, gender as systems of power are interdependent. Always, because she does not do that, because she forgets a little bit patriarchy, I would say, but I remind you not to forget. So race and class, gender as a system of power, patriarchy as a system of power. Intersecting power, she implies, to be honest. Yes, I don't want, but she does not forget. I was a little bit too critical towards her. She does not mention enough patriarchy and dialectical patriarchy and emancipation, but they're interdependent. Intersecting power relations produce complex social inequalities. Patriarchy plus all of this, very complex social inequalities. Intersecting power relations shape individual and group experiences. We said everywhere, in the schoolyard, at the job place, in the family, everywhere. So individual and group experiences are built upon these intersecting powers. also of those who are on the other side, who are not subordinated. Their lives are also relational. That's a relational context. Those who exploit, who are races who are rich and get capital and surplus value from those, and also subordinate women, etc. So these intersecting power relations shape individual and group experiences of both sides, and solving social problems requires intersectional analysis. So that's why this intersectionality as the paradigmatic analytical tool for feminist knowledge production is important, because it equips us with the most complex and most proper tools. Of course, we always, again, have to have in mind so different aspects of this whole story that it's not easy. It's not easy for individual women or non-binary person. It's not easy for policy makers, policy decision makers, for legislators, for judges. It's not easy, but that's the target. That's the aim, to understand, to comprehend, to catch this complexity. And also very important, when different systems of power have been taken into consideration, Patricia Hill Collins speaks that there are also sub-constructs of domains of power. Systems of power act within sub-constructs, interpersonal domain of power. So these power systems can function within two of us, two persons. Then disciplinary sub-construct of power. Sit here, sit closer. So within particular disciplines, sphere of life, these power systems, we can recognize them, their mutual crossing. Then cultural domain of power, stigmas, stereotypes, they are there, always. And the structural domain of power, institutional discrimination. How institutional designs, infrastructures reproduce, contribute to maybe sometimes overcome or strengthen power imbalances. So that is that. So we don't have a time now. I think that you understand very well that intersectionality approach to gender-based violence goes beyond already very complex understanding of the roots of gender-based violence in patriarchy and dialectical patriarchy and emancipation, because here we add these other roots. When you have very poor, when you have so many different dimensions of discrimination matched within particular individuals or groups, they're so as much as that they're vulnerable to gender-based violence more than those who have not been their case. And I give some, I think, rather stupid examples. Read them, rewrite them. You will see that's not stupid, but I gave some examples and wanted to discuss with you how do you suppose that violence could emerge because of these differences between two persons. I only interpersonal relations and the domain where systems of power act I mentioned here, but I was not enough creative. So you can rewrite and we can talk about. So diversity approach, we know, is also necessary, non-binary, taking into account. And global north, global south interplay as a component of the feminist intersectionality approach, the huge topic, not enough developed. There are sources. I have been dealing with them a lot because I'm in the process of editing and publishing for Springer the book Law, Gender and Power, Global North, Global South interplay. Extremely relevant and interesting. But let us leave it. You have this global north, global south interplay within intersectionality, gender-based discrimination is related to colonial heredity, neocolonialism, destiny of indigenous communities, heredity of slavery, causes of differences in life conditions of women and non-binary people in the global north and global south. And the shift from the concepts of the first and second world and the third world. Second was when the Soviet bloc existed until 1990s, and now more, how to say, much more used is this global north, global south discourse. But it's very important just to say that, not to understand these concepts primarily or only, far from only, it would not be good, as geographical concepts. And as geographical, for example, notorious is to say that some countries of huge economic development have been in the south, but also in the geographical economic terms, in a sense that global south is that to the global south belong only those geographically and less developed countries, because my thesis is that most of black or colored, more general, people in the USA belong to the global south. And also that's as an example, but I like very much the theory of Antonio Negri and always forget his name. Never mind. Negri and who wrote the fantastic book, The Empire, where they explain the pyramid of the centers of power. On the top, to make it short and simplified, to the top of that pyramid belong all those, just a small number of extremely rich people across the globe. In Serbia, you have extremely rich, I don't know how many, I do not dare to think about, but I think that there are too many, but in the USA, but so to the global north, top of the pyramid, I think belong all those extremely, independently on how they got that wealth. Some in legitimate, legal, and many in non-legal ways. But I would say that in each country, nowadays, in this global context, we have the global pyramid in which upper parts and the highest parts of upper parts belong global north and all the others to the global south. Because the losers of globalization, that's a huge amount of people. There are categories of surplus people, undocumented people, across new slaves, etc., etc. So I don't want to go more in depth, but be cautious. Do not reduce this concept to geographically and economic, because In each country, you have very rich people who can afford everything to themselves, and smaller proportion among them of female persons, winners of globalization, and they have had certain benefits, but all the others multiply sources of discrimination. Very interesting, very, very interesting context. And intersectionality, now I'm I forgot the break. Shall we go on and finish soon?
Yeah.
Do you need break? Because usually, don't forget it, because when I'm very concentrated, and today I feel well, I'm very concentrated, and then I forgot. But usually 1 hour plus 10, 15 minutes break, 1 hour more. So please interrupt me. Today, I don't know, I don't have any idea what's... Oh, that's okay. So do you need now a short break? We can. Okay, 10 minutes. Is it okay with you?
It's okay.
Okay, sorry I forgot to make break.
It's not a problem.
Okay, in 10 minutes.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Baš mislim da je bilo dobro. Jako užasno zanimljivo. Užasno mnogo. Da poludiš. Da poludiš. Da, ali je odlično, baš zanimljivo. Sad ću da se malo koncentrišem da ubrzam. I ne moram da ubrzam, znači nisam ja dugo mnogo pričala. 5:05 došlo. Pa dobro. I sad da vidimo, znači počinjemo, moram sad da uzmem, pa ću da ubrzam.
6:30. Ne,
10. Danko. Samo da se sad prisetim. Da, to ću brzo. Ovo isto je jako zanimljivo. Neću da uspeti. Anastazija, ja? Možeš da pratiš? Odlično. To je, znači, stotinama, sad ja preterujem hiljadama godina, ali i hiljadu bar. Više od stare Grčke, ali iz ovih drugih civilizacija. Znači, potpuno nevidljiva sfera znanja, iskustva.
Pa isto je početala da je u Africi mnogo pre kolonijalizma, da su bili mnogo više otvoreni za različite rodove i za da...
Zato što kolonijalizam je doneo i monoteističke religije koje su nametnule patrijarhalni model nuklearne porodice kao model, znači bio i u seksualnom i u, ne znam kako sam se umorila, u smislu odnosa mnogo, kako da kažem, to sam htela da kažem, da, nego sam se sad malo prebacila na engleski pa ne mogu se setiti. Znači, to je to molding, jako lep izraz koji koristimo za formiranje nation states, za May sad nešto pripremam neka predavanja. Znači, kada se sve ukalupljuje, različiti običaji, dijalekti, iskustva, sve mora da bi nation state bila homogena i da se nametne jedan mainstream model i vladanja i ponašanja. I tako je i u ovim Znači, kolonijalne vlasti su nametale svoje modele, a crkve i religije njima nametale. To mi je objašnjavao moj kolega sa istorije, jer ja to nisam mogla do kraja da sebi da razjasnim. Kada se ovaj monogamni tip porodice, patrijarhat, ono srednje doba varvarstva, 3000. Ne, sad pazi sad ovo, ne, znači patrijarhat da, srednje do kraja još da prouči, ali
Baš sam slušala Agelas.
koliko je sati? Kakav podcast?
Agelas, ne znam znate.
Ne.
Super je podcast se dovodi čovjek baš naučnike, stručnjake.
Poslaćeš mi link.
I doveo je jednog arheologa koji je pričao o neolitu i arheolog je zapravo koji je dalje restomarno baš ne zato što je vrlo feminističko arheološko istraživanje koje je genijalno. Ona je istraživala nađene kaščice i svi su godinama nazad govorili da su to kao bilo za ritualne obrede. I ona kaže, posledam kaščicu i pošto sam majka, imam dete, znam kako se deca hrani, kako pričaju. I onda je dobila u neki projekat i spravila čitav istraživanje da dokaže da je kaščica, da nije ritualni obred. Zašto je to problem? Zato što svi arheolozi presni muškarci, kojima na pamet nije palo.
Nikad mu neće pasti na pamet. Osim ako nije počeo da ti on palo. Da.
I ona je na kraju dokazala kako je to.
Jelena, samo vas da mi se predstavite dok ne počnemo. Šta sam sad pravno?
Da.
Dobro.
Ti to imala kod vas zapravo institut rodnog prava.
Pa jesi, pa da. Mnogo sam srećena što si upisala Law and Gender. A znaš koliko sam znaš što sam sad uradila? Ja sam sad napravila knjigu, ali nemam sad vremena, ne vredi. Nemam vremena ovo da pričam. Znači sad sam i za studije roda napravila knjigu od 500 strana rodi pravo i rod. A zašto sam je napravila? Zato što smo Law and Gender se formirao preko velikog projekta međunarodnog i mi ga kreditovala ovaj divan master. I onda sam rekla, kako sam ja uključila jako mnogo kolega i kolegica spravno, uvukla sam ih da se otvore za temu, onda sam ih podstakla da za svoje discipline napišu tekstove. I samo mi nedostaje za civil law i za criminal law zato što nisu imale vremena. Zbog napredanja fenomenalna knjiga. Znači to je ovoliko, za studije roda, nebitno što će svako da izabere 2-3, vidjet ću kako će to da se, pošto sad ja više i nisam na osnovnim, ali svejedno ću s njima se dogovorim, da izaberu, da svako možda izabere po 3, a će svi da se uključu u nastavu. Znači, jer smo za ovaj projekat radili i to sam stavila na sajt, tu Open Access knjigu Gender Competitive Legal Education, stvarno kvalitet. To svaki put ponavljam, ja se svaki put zapanjem, pogledajte na Springer sajtu, svaki put 50.000 više pregleda. To je ludilo neko, 400.000 pregleda. Nije to samo zato što je ona, kako da kažem, pri ruci, što je Open Access. Nego ima i neki, i tako, to sam replikovala da na srpskom urade. Ove su Adriana je trebala sa mnom da drži o sex and gender, ali je sad u inostranstvu, jer ona je puno i pisala štete. Ja volim. I trebala je sa Spajićem da govori o feminist movements, ali nije tu. Ja je baš volim, baš je volim.
Evo, njene knjige su na prvom svetskom zajedništvu i onda sam dobro dobacila izborni trening.
Ludilo.
A posle sam ju poslu.
I brzo Anastazija.
Ja sam učila i došla sam drugi.
Divno. Da. U ovu ludu zemlju. Da.
Dobila sam priliku od samog univerziteta da idem tu.
Divno.
I prošle put ja sam izabrala mnogo smjera, studirala crkveno pravo, ekološko, ovu stvari. Ovaj put sam došla da pišem neki sej na sportsko pravo.
Divno.
Bilo važno ljudi za mene, a nisam mogla da izaberem toliko.
A trebalo je da izabereš još neki, štete. Ali ova metodologija, da. Ali Miodrag će ti biti od koristi. Na njegovo predavanje on je jako fenomenalno, da. A ja mu kažem, javi, podsjeti studente, onako, svaki put mi nešto. Yes, we are starting.
Professor ka ne Raju ma'am.
Molim?
Professor ka
Yes.
ne Raju ma'am.
Sorry, we are No. I didn't. No. I was talking. I was chatting with students here in the classroom, and now we will start. You cannot understand because this was just chatting, but we enjoyed chatting too much. Sorry, we are starting now. Okay. Resume.
Raju ma'am.
Okay.
Raju ma'am.
Just a second. Oh, the next. Okay. So I spoke relatively enough about intersectionality approach. If you did not understand something, we can talk more, but you have uploaded a few texts. You have also in the reader two excellent texts of Patricia Hill Collins and some others. And what I also insist on, I do not want to be pretentious, but due to the fact that I have been really studying a lot during a significant number of years these issues, I think that I've been also advancing some dimensions of, in this case, of the intersectionality approach. Because when I wrote, for example, when a political discourse of gender justice, which I attach or connect to the intersectionality feminist political theories approach. So two different but complementary political theories discourses, as I spoke at the previous lecture, the lecture 2, History of Political Philosophy and Contemporary Political Theories. I spoke about how the history of political philosophy was focused on the theories of justice, and then emerged from 18th century the differentiation of, and this deconstructing, dismantling of political philosophy as the unique, the one, how to say that, a common denomination of political thought through centuries, and then it was differentiated into different social theories, political theories, legal theories, and sciences. And I also spoke about that within the contemporary political discourse or political theories, again emerged particular theories of justice of Rawls, Dworkin, and a few other authors. And then I referred to them and mentioned also theories which opened the space for understanding gender justice among mainstream political theologians of justice, like Walzer, Rawls, and Philip Green. And then I spoke about feminist theories of justice. The main difference between feminist theories of justice and mainstream political theories of justice from nowadays, but also concerning the whole history of political philosophy, and we mentioned how it was with Aristotle, for example, and etc. So the main difference is that mainstream political theories of justice refer issue of justice only to the public sphere and do not consider the private sphere and family sphere as relevant for the issues of justice. So justice is a matter of public life. Family and gender are matters of private life, and changes and steps forward and paradigm switches happened with a few of these mainstream political authors who, in this or that way, open space for interlinking family life and injustice in family life, so gender injustice with injustice in public life. That did especially in an articulated way Philip Green and Walter Less. And then feminist political theorians of justice, Susan Moller O'Keefe and Iris Morion Young and Nancy Fraser, they added a lot. So I will not. So political discourse of justice we have on one side. On another side, we have intersectionality discourse on multiple gender-based discrimination. So my contribution is, because I have studied a lot intersectionality approach as such, and feminist theories of justice as such. And there is one or two my chapters in the reader. One maybe is uploaded. I forgot what I put into the hard copy, where I really seriously, together with Adriana, I wrote one chapter on gender justice. And then it comes to me as very clear, obvious, visible that these two versions of political theories have been very close to each other, very complementary to each other. They and that is why I give myself right to say that feminist theories of gender justice reconsider or deal with intersectionality approach with different categories, differently, but the same substance is present in both of them. So when I hear used some of the ideas of Nancy Fraser, because at the previous lecture I spoke more, when she speaks about, when she differentiates gender-based distributive injustice, she combines discrimination based on gender, class, and race, unpaid domestic work, ill-paid female jobs, and gender pay gap, they sharpened by racism and other sources of multiple discrimination. So gender-based distributive injustice is not in her case like as in the Rawls case, when he speaks about the veil of ignorance and justice as fairness. He speaks primarily about the public sphere, and he mentions family, but he is far from that it comes to his mind that family injustice crosses in itself economic, social dimension, with racist dimension, with educational dimension, with age, ability, and other dimensions. And these feminist theorians of justice do that. So Nancy Fraser, when she mentions gender-based distributive injustice, she implies many of these things which are also included into intersectionality approach. And she also speaks about gender-based recognition injustice, stigma, stereotypes, prejudice, violence against women based on sexism, patriarchal devaluation of women, and based on other sources of devaluation. And she also says that recognition in justice means devaluation of the feminine expressed in sexual harm, assault, sexual exploitation, domestic violence, and domestic subordination. But you have to recognize there, so domestic subordination has elements of class-based discrimination as well. Unpaid work and lower paid work in the public space. So this complexity of devaluation and discrimination through gender, through justice and gender justice discourse replicates or complementary knowledge offers us complementary to intersectionality approach. And also when Iris Morian Young speaks about 5 phases of oppression: exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, inequality, violence. All these dimensions of subordination have been also included differently, but seemingly into intersectionality political theories and feminist political theories discourse. My point is that both discourses should be kept in mind and used for catching the complexity of the issue. Besides gender-based distributive injustice and gender-based recognition injustice, about which at best speaks Nancy Praise, other authors mention also family injustice, mentions explicitly Susan Moller-O'Keefe, but also we can mention from other authors reproductive injustice, right to abortion, healthcare of women, protection against obstetric violence, etc., menstrual injustice, etc. I did not mention those other authors, so it seems like a Susan Moller-O'Keefe, but she does not mention these last ones. So these two political discourses are complementary, but there is the third one, the legal discourse of substantive equality. So legal theories, postmodern critical legal theories of substantive equality can be and have been applied also on gender, substantive gender equality, and in the best way by Susan Fredman. And you have uploaded her fantastic, extremely complex, very short but extremely rich article. She also has the book on the issue, anti-discrimination law. But in this article, the title is Substantive Equality Revisited. And she also, within that analysis, she speaks a lot about substantive gender equality. So you remember when Jelena, when you asked me about the second wave of feminism, which started, so feminist movements were organized with a focus on becoming aware that formal legal equality is not sufficient. So the pledge for something more. And at best articulated, this pledge for more is an idea of substantive gender equality, how it is articulated by Susan Fredman. So it came, so I got information about her work from other authors, and then started analyzing her contributions a lot, and then realized that also for example, UN working group for women and girls, then some courts, constitutional courts of the South Africa and some other, then the European Court of Human Rights also in some cases starts taking into consideration her complex approach, four-dimensional approach to substantive gender inequality, or with an idea to reconsider different cases, case law or policy cases, etc., from the point of substantive gender equality. And then that will be the end of our presentation for today. It's not easy, but you have to read that chapter, and I will help you now with short explanations, and maybe we will mention something again at the classes for devoted to glossaries, because I think repeating some of these things is not bad, because it, how to say, adds to the building up of the knowledge, to the capacity for appropriating new categories, visions, ideas, which are not easy. So repeating some of them in different contexts is not for in vain. And Sandra Fredman mentions that, of course, there have already been adopted within certain legal traditions or within some courts approaches towards substantive gender equality, but understood as single principles. And those single principles, like as equality of results or equality of opportunities or value of dignity. And now I do not want to go, you can read this and you will read from her chapter. Her argument is that equality of results, it is a relevant, how to say, standpoint or starting point for reconsidering the situation of some female persons, in a sense that preferential treatment to disadvantaged groups, quotas, affirmative measures can be of help. But they can be of help only when you put aside different starting positions. They cannot help to overcoming that gap. A similar argument is for equality of opportunities. That single principle approach really can be of help. But equality of opportunities without equalizing starting positions, because the equality of opportunity does not mean anything for those who are not equal at their standpoints, etc., etc. So what she does, she takes into consideration equality of results, equality of opportunity approach, and human dignity, but she develops four-dimensional conception of the right to substantive gender, to substantive equality, including substantive gender equality. And again, I find out their intersectionality approach differently through the legal discourse and legal categories develop. And my main idea is, that is what I say at the end, that these two political discourses of intersectionality, feminist approach, and gender justice, and legal discourse of substantive gender equality, they are very complementary and should be kept in mind, all of them, and used as supportive one to each other for as better as possible catching the complexity of multiple discrimination. And what she says, only a complex combination of different principles can be fully responsive to multiple discrimination. And a nice quotation, to social, economic, cultural, political wrongs experienced by women or other outgroups on account of their status. Social, economic, cultural, political, everything what is mentioned in theories of gender justice, what is mentioned in intersectionality approach is also here. And you will see how fantastic articulation. I like it very much, how she does it. And she says it is necessary to apply this four-dimensional approach with taking into account simultaneously all four dimensions, not one then another, but all four. First, to redress disadvantage, this word redress is weird, to overcome. Second, to address, to challenge, to address stigma, stereotyping, prejudice, and violence. Third, to enhance voice and participation, right to voice, right to vote, right to voice, participation of women in decision making. Fourth, to accommodate difference and achieve structural change. Again, in a weird way articulated, but meaning that being ready, being in favor of changing institutions with an aim to accommodate them to deal with differences among people, something like that. So, four-dimensional approach to the right to substantive equality is not a definition. Now I quote her because I like this, and I think they are clarifying. So that's not important as the definition, but as the analytical tool. But as it is not a definition, but an analytical framework to assess, evaluate, and assist activist approach, first to understand and then to change situation, to assess and assist in modifying laws, policies, and practices to better achieve substantive equality. Fantastic. Again, the aim is to provide a set of criteria to determine whether a law, policy, practice, or institution is likely to fulfill the right to equality, not formal equality, the right to substantive equality, and to point to way in which they should be reformed better to do so. So, set of criteria provides for questioning concrete laws, policies, practices in the classroom or anywhere, different practices or institutions, to check, to question them from the point whether they enable fulfilling right to equality or an opposite, inequalities, or strengthen, fix inequalities. Again, it aims at providing an analytical framework to illuminate better the multifaceted, I don't know to pronounce the best, nature of inequality and to assist in determining whether actions, practices, or institutions impede or further the right to equality, similar to the previous, but again, I like this quotation. And this reflects the principle that the right to equality should be responsive to those, this is the point, should be responsive to those who are disadvantaged, demeaned, excluded, or ignored. That's the point of the whole story about multiple gender-based discrimination, because the aim is to overcome that. And so when she speaks about redress first dimension, redress disadvantage or overcoming. That's the redistributive dimension of the right to substantive gender equality. Redressing disadvantage means attempts towards modifying laws, policies, practices, institutions with the aim to overcome, now I reproduce her ideas, to overcome disadvantage of women, their deprivileged position. It includes, at first place, social economic disadvantage, but not only that. Unpaid domestic work, lower paid jobs, and gender pay gap. But overcoming disadvantage. So first, this redistributing dimension is not only economic, social, material, has much more of that, is crossed with other dimensions of discrimination. It should encompass more than social economic aspect, imbalanced distribution of resources. It has to take into consideration other three dimensions of discrimination of these 4 dimensions. It has to deal also with stigma, lack of voice, or structural factors which lock individuals into poverty. Structural factors like lack of access to education, to other sources of empowerment of women, many other things, or the lack of opportunities for gender awareness raising, etc., etc. It should encompass challenging domination power balances within and outside family, also attempts to remove obstacles to genuine choices of women. So many obstacles, so many different these dimensions. To overcome negative circumstances related to disability and caring obligations. It should aim towards a multidimensional empowerment of women through introducing legal policy instruments for supporting education, job opportunities, for child care, assistance, by using affirmative measures. She says that putting into this context affirmative measures has much more effect because it puts it into all these measures for overcoming obstacles which are in front of those deprivileged women. Challenging stigma, stereotype, prejudice. She also calls that recognition dimension of substantive gender equality. And there is an analogy with those dimensions of gender justice, recognition and redistributive dimensions of gender justice in Nancy Fraser. But Friedman goes further, deeper, and beyond the level which Nancy Fraser, who has also been very good, theoretically speaking, but this is even more from the legal perspective. So this is a dimension of substantive equality related to a matter of identity, recognition of differences among women and in their relation to male persons. Identity is shaped through the ways in which we recognize ourselves, how others recognize us, and how we recognize others. As social constructs, stigma, stereotypes, and prejudice can be challenged because they are constructs based on patriarchal matrix, and changed through laws, policies, practices, institutions of culture, media, education, plus social economic measures for overcoming disadvantages. You see intersectional perspective also here. So laws, policies, and practices for acting against gender-based violence are also included, acting against its patriarchal sexist roots as well as its racist, homophobic, economic, cultural roots. Again, intersectional perspective in understanding gender-based violence. Participatory dimension of the right to substantive gender equality. Formal right to speak is not sufficient for women unless there is also the potential of being heard and being engaged in political decision-making. in different fields. Then participatory dimension. Here, quota system works better than in opportunity one-dimensional understanding of starting opportunities for women. So participatory dimension, social inclusion of women through quota system is better justified from this perspective instead of the one called equality of results and equality of opportunities. Participatory dimension is also expressed through judicial review, where victims' side of gender-based violence is the focus to be heard. Then that participatory dimension is present in empowerment, overcoming disadvantage, entrenched inequalities, and lack of capabilities. So in each versions, dimensions of empowerment and overcoming those obstacles in education, opportunities, etc. for women. Then social inclusion based on overcoming stigmatization of particular groups of women. So affirming tolerance and solidarity. Combination with redistributive and recognition dimension in different aspects of social inclusion. So you see, these three dimensions already have to be taken at the same time and with mutual crossing in her conception. And the fourth one, which I explained a little bit, accommodating difference and structural changes of institutional frameworks. The aim is to respect differences of outgroups, these are her words, including women, and to change existing social structures for a purpose of accommodating differences. The challenges do exist concerning how far structural changes should go. And the question arises, when it is and when it is not reasonable to accommodate difference or tolerate minority cultures. For example, should polygamy be accommodated? No. Should religious objections to equal rights for LGBT or women be tolerated? No. Should burqas be permitted? Yes, if those women wear them with their will, not as imposed by the community. Should female genital mutilation be banned or tolerated? Should be banned because puts into danger lives. Although there are theories, of course, which relativize this cultural legacy with an attempt to become more tolerant for, but I would say no. So four-dimensional approach offers a complex framework for open discussions and search for legal solutions. For example, maybe some of my responses when I said no, yes, could be contested, put into the question. And then this four-dimensional framework of analysis gives enough space for the discussion and evaluation and decision making, giving arguments for and against, and coming to the stage of the best arguments to be those valid ones. So that's the point. There are many too complex issues, or there are some at least, for which you cannot be sure. And so the most easy way, the most easy issue is with burqas, to put into question too rigid approach nowadays among many Western countries towards wearing burqas. This four-dimensional approach. when, how much, why not accepting, should be accepted or not. So that's the point. This analytical framework of substantive gender equality four-dimensional understanding opens the space for better understanding each particular case and deciding upon in courts, in different practices. And so that's so to finish with this intersectionality approach, feminist intersectionality approach and feminist conception of gender justice belong to the political theories discourse. Feminist conceptions of substantive gender equality belong to the legal theories discourse. They are complementary and mutually enriching approaches. So that is what I tried to say at the beginning. I came to this, to these conclusions due to the fact that had an opportunity to study all these very relevant, very complex fields. And then you have, with that overview, it becomes easier to see how complementary and mutually enriching they are. I think that I believe that you will not find this argument anywhere in any other author or thinker, but I feel, competent to argue in favor of these statements about complementarity and mutual enriching of these approaches, approach of intersectionality, feminist intersectionality approach, feminist theories of gender justice, and feminist legal theories of substantive equality. With this, I will finish and I will stop recording. And now, if you have questions, please, the floor is yours. Questions online?
Madam, no question. Question is you are as a professor ka your structure of reading is all this no.
Odlično. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I also think that it was not bad, to be honest. So I'm happy if you're satisfied. This really is not easy, but is interesting.
Yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, really
opens. I think that it opens the mindsets.
definitely.
Okay. If there are no questions, there will be. Dushanka, please.
Practical thing.
Okay,
Again,
please.
with the assignment. This is also a part for the assignment.
Yeah. So this is a part of those four assignments. These are topics.
Yeah.
Yes. Making the circling. And the next lecture, I forgot when is. I know I have many lectures. Methodology and feminist and at Master in European Integration. So I had to make. So we will speak. Bojan, he is very interesting also. He will speak on. I will just a second. Methodology glossaries. Thursday, December 4. December 8, methodology glossaries with Nina Krštenin. Then gender issue and feminist concepts, Tuesday, December 9, my lecture. And with Tanasi, he's also very interesting. Political concepts, main political concepts reconsidered from the feminist point of view on the next Tuesday.
Yeah, 2 Tuesdays.
2 Tuesdays. It should have been Tuesday, then Friday, but then Tanasi asked it to be on Tuesday, not on Friday, because he travels a lot. Family lives in Strasbourg. So that was the reason that we first have the lecture on legal concepts and then political concepts. And Miodrag Jovanovic will speak on, those are other lectures. No, I here have only mine. He will speak about legal approach. It is also interesting. He's all the time, he enters the feminist discourse, but all the time you will see with a bit of, not animosity, but like something like this, guard. So you will see. So it will be interesting. And also Tanasi is, and Adriana, if she could have taken it, also would have been fantastic. But all those professors are.
They're great. Like,
So can you believe that I managed all of them to
open themselves up.
to be honest, one of the reasons why I decided to enroll in this master was when I saw the list of professors. It was like, I knew who I liked from the
Ivana Krstić, Bojana Čučković, Ivana Marković for criminal law. She's also very good. She's younger, but she's very good. You don't know her. Ljubinka Kovač, fantastic. So you had a good reasoning. Fantastic professors. Thank you.
Thank you.
A nešto sam danas uživala. Ne znam šta je.
Super.
Da, jel da? Super, samo nisam pila vode.
Profesor, hvala puno.
A molim, hvala, izvinjavam se, mi nismo ugasili.
Yeah.
See, tomorrow, please
Hvala puno.
don't forget.
Okay.
Molim, Seinfeld, tomorrow you have at 6 o'clock methodology classes
Yeah,
with
I know,
Professor
I know.
Miodrag.
I know.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Radi, ma'am.
Paži, ja sam zaboravila da ugasim. Kako beše ovo?
Da nećemo to da dođemo. Što da idete, gdje nam je onaj...
Evo ga, išla sam.
Ili na stop.
Šta je u četvrtak? Blas, nema veze. Da. Dobro.
I onda next. I to je to.
Bye. Ćao.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Laku noć. No. Okay. Yes.